Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Vienna Live with Simeon Moore and other third parties. If you wish to not be recorded, please go to the LinkedIn live video feed, the link to which I've just placed in the chat room. Tonight, our featured guest is David Robaire, a jazz bassist, an executive and artistic director of Sam First Bar and Records. Welcome, David.
Hey, how are you, Simeon?
So, David, tell us about where you come from, how your musical influences, how your musical influences, and why you decided to become a professional jazz bassist.
Sure. I mean, music was something that was always around, primarily from my dad. We share a love of kind of classic rock, and that was really my introduction into loving music, was via Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and all that kind of stuff. And eventually, I had really great programs when I was growing up, middle school, high school, music programs, and I was encouraged to play guitar, and I got really into it, but eventually settled on the bass towards the end of high school. And it's always been my passion, just loving jazz in particular, but the bass as an instrument, the bass's role within a group, and all of that just really spoke to me. Something about being I think it was something about being a perpetual sideman, not taking the leader chair, but always being needed in other people's groups. There was something attractive, about that for me. So that's kind of what got me into the bass as an instrument. And I got chance to study with some really incredible musicians, including one of my greatest teachers, John Patitucci, who is world-renowned bassist, and I just got to learn so much through my years in college in New York and studying with John. And everything that I learned from him and all these other great teachers I had kind of works its way into everything that I do today, whether it be playing music or something else revolving around the music.
Okay, let's have a listen to our second track of the evening. This is Tiburcio by Josh Nelson.
All your friends are with you, standing by your side. Life is quickly passing. You ride by. Where does the time go, Tiburcio? I hope you're safe, this I pray. Please come home to my love and don't lose your way.
Wow. Okay. So tell us, now you were a successful jazz bassist. You'd studied in New York, as you said, and you had your calling as a sideman, very successful in Los Angeles and traveling. Then you get a phone call that changes your life. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so just to backtrack a quick second, after New York, I had moved back to LA and I was playing a lot around the clubs here and traveling a bit and playing with a lot of the musicians I used to play with in New York as they would come out to the West Coast to do tours. While I was in the midst of all that and a lot of teaching, I got a call from a guy named Paul Solomon, who I knew from several years back through my dad, actually. And he said, "Hey, I'm opening a small bar next to the airport, and I want to have some live jazz there." And apparently he called me because I was the only jazz musician he knew at the time, or the only one who he had at least the phone number of in his phone. So yeah, I kind of started there, and I've always had this interest in connecting people, and like I said, like when musician friends of mine would come out from the East Coast to play, I would be the guy they'd call to help line up a band of great West Coast musicians, to put the West Coast tour together. And I kind of found myself in this position of like, always kind of knowing who would work best in which scenarios and who would work well with, personalities have a lot to do with who works well together. And so I started to kind of, piece that together like, oh, okay, I can book music at a venue, I can see what happens there. And, it started off as just booking a pianist and sometimes a bassist duo, for the first couple nights. We had actually Josh Nelson, the pianist who was on that last video, and Larry Goldings, who we're going to hear from in a little bit. They were some of our first performers. And it was like immediately we started to realize like, this is not just a bar that has music. This is a venue that has really nice drinks, and really great food, but it really is a venue first. And once we realized that, which was very enlightening to me, being the musician in the relationship, it immediately just opened so many avenues of like what we can do and serving LA's needs, because LA, the scene has gotten so strong over the last 15 years or so strong, so many amazing players here, but the amount of clubs that exist don't match with the amount of players that are here and the amount of great music happening. So I definitely felt like there was a place for us.
Before we get to our next music selection, tell us about that moment when you realized this is a venue. This is not the place with great drinks and food, but this is about music. Was it the musicians who were telling you, or was it the clients who were saying,
No.
"Wow, this beer is nice, but I really like the music"? Or
No, the musicians were kind of like me. They were just happy to have a place to play. It didn't really, we didn't set our expectations high that it needed to be a listening environment or anything. But I actually have to give a lot of credit where it's due to Paul, the guy who really envisioned this whole thing, because he's very particular about a lot of things. But one of those things is like sound. He's very particular to distracting sounds, right? So he can't enjoy a show if somebody's talking next to him or somebody's crinkling a wrapper or something like that. I was joking with our bar manager yesterday. We were talking about how, at one point we were going to add carrots to the menu in one of our dips, and we decided not to because they're just too loud. Like that's how seriously, we shut down the refrigeration when the shows happen. The room is silent. It's like a pin can drop, meanwhile in between sets it's like a very lively, friendly environment where everybody's chatting and getting up and talking and mingling. So it's a great juxtaposition of like, okay, now the show starts, everybody sit down, get your drink, let's enjoy the next hour.
let's listen to our next selection. This is by Clam City. It's New Wave Theater. So Sam First Bar opened on a fateful time, just 1 or 2 years before 2020, before the pandemic happened. I at that
Yeah.
time I remember right before the pandemic happened, I was in Vienna at that time, walking by a just opened bar, and I thought, oh, that's great, I want to go there. And then the next day it was closed because of the lockdown. Then a few months later, it was completely empty because they'd moved out. So tell us about how you guys weathered this and what happened. This all started with a prophetic, destined phone call, and then suddenly you have this thing happen. How'd you guys survive?
Yeah, we opened in towards the end of 2017. So by the time the pandemic hit, we were like 2.5 years in, and we had really gained a lot of momentum. So there was, we had set an expectation for the audiences and the musicians in LA that here we have this club, here we have this great place to play. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hits. And of course, everybody's gigs went away, but everybody's wondering what's still going to be there when we come back. It was important to us to, let our musicians know, let our community know that, we are in this together and we are sticking it through, because there was so much uncertainty around, the other venues. Naturally so. I mean, it's impossible to stay open through that if you're paying all your bills through the whole thing. So, everybody knows you don't really open a jazz club to make a huge profit. And so, when you have something like a pandemic affecting, the little sales or the little revenues, I should say, that you have, the only way to stay open is by, toughing it out and kind of making sure that when you do reopen, you can do it as strong as possible. So the record label that we have, Sam First Records, that actually was born out of the pandemic. And the idea was, we had all this great music performing live at the club. And, when you walk away, or the audiences that were seeing these concerts, they would then walk away and everything would be gone. Right. So how do we get this information? How do we stand the test of time with, really well-crafted recordings? And this was the time for us to really, invest in recording gear, outfit the room with the right gear in order to make sure that we could capture these performances the right way. And then, it started off as us live streaming shows in order to, give our audience something to grasp onto during the pandemic, and give our musicians a performance opportunity. And then when the club reopened in March of whenever that was, March of 2020, we had all of this set up and ready to go. So it was kind of like, okay, now begins our stage of documenting great music for all time.
Okay, let's listen to our third track. This is Let's Go by Devin Daniels. So this brings us to our philosophical part of the conversation, which is entitled Preserving and Showcasing Jazz in Los Angeles. According to growannenberg.com, quote, Sam First was opened by real estate developer and jazz enthusiast Paul Solomon in 2017 to serve as a sustainable home for jazz in the Los Angeles region. Less than a 10-minute walk from Los Angeles International Airport, the club showcases first-rate modern, eclectic, and straight-ahead jazz in an intimate, mid-century modern venue that allows patrons to feel part of the musical magic unfolding before them. Sam First hosts two nightly sets each Tuesday through Saturday that features such renowned musicians as Joe LaBarbera, Rachel Eckroth, Devin Daniels, and Justin Coughlin. Almost all of Sam First performances are live streamed, and some are now recorded for release on the club's new record label, Sam First Records. In 2024, Solomon transformed the club into a 501c3 organization, further ensuring that Sam First will be primed to support jazz music for the years to come and foster its growth in Los Angeles and beyond. End quote. The question is, so I'm tuning in here from New England, where everyone here supports the New England Patriot football team, and they play in the Gillette Stadium, which is it's a leisure place, I guess, but it's also for profit. You don't think about that as a place that would, as you say, have small profit margins. This place has really big profit margins, but it's in a similar it's in a similar industry. It's providing so-called entertainment or something like a bar. So why is it that Sam First Bar and Record today became a charitable organization?
So there's a long, long history, of course, of jazz music and of course classical music before that, and concurrent with that, raising money in order to see that it survives the way that it should. The reality is that with both those musics being foundational to other styles of music that we have, especially here in the United States, we base most of our music on the roots of classical and jazz music. And if these art forms were to dissipate, if they were to go away, our music would lack foundation in a lot of ways, right? So I feel like there is while there's always, of course, followers and fans of the music, there has been a long history of supporters of the music too. So in the jazz world, we have people like, historically speaking, there was this woman named Panonica, who was a really important, Monk wrote a tune about her, and a lot of people, Nika's Dream by Horace Silver, that was written for Panonica. Nika, and she was one of the big, people who gave money to the artists and housed them and gave them places to rehearse, and that allowed the music to not just survive but thrive, and that's really, really important. These musicians are not the musicians who play in the club. We're not talking about people who are just kind of getting their stuff together. We're talking about world-class jazz musicians, right? And so we need to make sure that there is a home, especially in a city like LA, that can stand the test of time, a home for this music. Because some of the issues that we run into is when a pandemic, for instance, hits, that's not a regular occurrence, thank God, but there are all sorts of obstacles in today's world, especially in light of recent events. And it feels absolutely more necessary than ever that we are able to continue our programming regardless of the ebbs and flows of the industry, regardless of if you have a really tight profit margin and you have a slow week, that's enough for some places to shut down. It's very, very important to us that we can have a slow year and still be around next year. But case in point, that's what the pandemic was for us. It was a very slow period of time, but we made the best of it, and we're on the better end of it now. And things are thriving better than they were prior to the pandemic. So
Would you compare what might you call what you do something like a music think tank? It's what the ideas that are coming out, they can be used by the public, but it's a public good that you're not keeping for yourselves and that are not already marketable.
Yeah, I guess in a way, you know, we have a board, and in a lot of ways that nonprofit board acts like a think tank. You know, we're all brainstorming constantly. We have committees within the board that brainstorm, you know, different ways to engage with the community, and that's really important. You know, we're not just we don't just want to be a club that provides music if you happen to be 21 and over. It's like we have a lot more responsibility than that. You know, a lot of us involved in the club have been heavily involved in education over the years. I've taught at lots of universities. You know, to me, it's like super important that we can expose the musicians who are most hungry for it to that music. So the live stream actually was a big part of that too. It was like, let's provide something for the entire community, not just the ones who are old enough to be with us, you know, in the evenings. So, you know, I think all of that ties into the vision of the nonprofit, and, you know, seeing a long-term home for this music, not just something that exists in a period of time in LA and then disappears, you know.
Now, David, if the menu committee comes back to you and says they want carrots, are you going to veto?
Hard veto.
Understood.
Music first.
Let's listen. This is our final track of the evening, Larry Golding's Mambo Inn. Final thought, final question of the evening. After all of this work, you guys are on a roll. What do you hope for in the future? What's your vision of Sam First Bar and Sam First Records?
That's a great question. We actually have big plans. We definitely plan to be in a larger space at some point. I don't know if that will coexist with Sam First, our small space, but in either case, whatever space we're in, wherever we are, the goal is always going to be to keep that intimacy. So, you know, our current room holds about 50 people. Even if we can fit 100, I want it to feel just as intimate and small as the room that we're currently in, because that's the charm, you know. So I think the end of the, you know, at the end of the day, the goal is bringing, you know, really great music to a really intimate space for the people who love it the most to enjoy together.
Let's see how we can stay in touch. So the records label is samfirstrecords.com, and you can order any of their records already here. Get to, there are some of the Larry Golding's record we just listened to, the Devin Daniels. So that's Sam First Records. And then to visit the bar, it is samfirstbar.com. And here we can you can find out about the upcoming performances. And then there's something else that's very important that I'd like to point out. You can support, make donations, tax deductible donations to Sam First, because it is now, as we mentioned, a 501c3 organization. So they do depend on people who support jazz and who want to support Sam First. So all you do is you just click on this support Sam First, and then you can give money right there. You can make your contribution known. Is that right, David? And people can reach out to you too if they have questions through this website?
Absolutely, yeah. You can reach me anytime at dave@samfirstbar.com. But all the other thing I just wanted to point out was our membership program, which is something we launched with the nonprofit, and we're going to be building over the course of the next year or so. So keep an eye out for perks there. Everything has a tax deductible amount, but this is a great way to get involved and show your support of the club, but actually get really nice perks in return. So.
Please do consider becoming a member. As you see, you can get a membership, a dual membership for $100, has those perks. Again, all of that is available at samfirstbar.com. Thank you so very much to David Robaire.
Thank you.
So let's see what's coming up on Vienna Live. We have here everything available. All information is available at www.seemingmore.com. And while you are at it, you can sign up for the Friday email that I sent out, giving everybody exclusive insights into upcoming shows and telling them my take on that week's show and everything else that's going on. It's easy enough. You just put in your email and then click yes, I want email updates from Vienna Live. So all information about upcoming shows is available at www.seemingmore.com. Once again, thank you so very much to David Robaire. Thank you to Vienna Live sponsors, Victoria and Frederick Mulligan. Thank you to Abby Moser, Agnieszka and Benoit Rivolet, and Mary Schlesinger for their support of this show. Thanks to my cousin Mike, a marketer from Layer App. If you're an architect or an engineer, they have a really cool tool you should check out. And of course, thanks most of all to you, our participants, who make it all worthwhile from Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles, California. Goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.